All right, welcome back. So we have successfully deployed our contract to a locally running Harmony node here. We did a bunch of tests, just calling Truffle test, that were defined in our JavaScript. So we had all our tests pass, which is great. And it's really a very, very low test coverage and a very, very simple smart contract for now. We may come through this contract again as we build a client side for it rapidly. But to round out this tutorial, I want to show everyone that after you deploy to a local node like this and your contracts are out there, just how to connect to those smart contracts. So what I'm going to do is inside my naming service, I'm going to clone a React boilerplate that I use. It's just one that I like to use. So it's just under my repositories here, and here it is. And it's a React, Redux Dunk, Sass, CSS modules. Most people use styled components, but I like to just write the normal CSS. I'm probably going to move to styled components because that's where everyone's going. So I'm going to copy the repo, and I'm going to clone it in here. And because I don't really want to, I don't really want to edit this repo here. I don't really want to participate with anything. I'm just going to rename it to client, so that'll be my client app. And then I'm going to get into the client, and I'm going to remove the Git folder and just kind of take a look at the source here. So it's got its own package.json, so I'm going to install that now. It's going to install a whole mess of front-end stuff. And this is just a React boilerplate with Redux, Thunk, all this good stuff. And this is just an app, basically, like a web app. So once you're inside this directory and you've installed, you should just be able to, start, and then it's going to boot up in my browser any second now. All right, cool. So I had a name there for some other thing I was working on, and I have a login. It's a goofy little login. It's just local storage. So it's just very, very simple. And then there's a sign out, right? So just some basic app components. But what we want to do is we want to interact with our naming service. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the client folder now. I'm just going to close all this stuff, and I'm going to focus on just cleaning up and getting this client side ready. So we'll start first things first with, we'll just change the name. So just change it to naming service, just some basic stuff in there. So that's nothing. App.js, lots of things imported and stuff flying around. We don't have to worry about that. We've got a couple of routes already, but let's just stick in the home route for now. So let's go straight to the home route, and let's change so there's no heading there. We also probably don't need a login or anything like that, so I do a little cheater sort of login thing here. We don't need login. We don't even need this user state thing. We're gonna add a new sort of state store for the contract that we're going to interact with. So we don't need a login. We don't need a lot of this stuff. Let's get rid of that in reducers as well. Get rid of the user reducer. Delete that. So back in app.js, home, about, login. We don't need a login route. Delete that. So it's just home, about. We'll figure out if we even need an about route later. About route. And loading, blah, blah, blah. That's whatever. Who cares? And just so you know, I'm using Reach Router instead of React Router, so things might look a little different with the routing if you're used to React Router. The other thing to note is just how I use Redux. It's a little bit different, so just brace yourself. And then here's the reducers. Everything should be hooked up, so I'm going to give it a shot. It's complaining, doesn't know about this or that, so let me just try to refresh here. And it says that user.js is gone. Okay, well, I don't really want user.js. Oh, I'm probably importing it somewhere else, so hold on. Yep, sure enough, it's there. And user state is there too, and we'll get rid of that reference. And this is like a little parcel thing. When in doubt, npm start. Still trying to open it there. Not trying to, I shouldn't have tried to strip out all this stuff. I should have just left it. But we'll get to the bottom of it. Here it is, user state. Well, there we go, that was easy. It's probably going to complain about something else now. Let's try that one more time. Whoa. Really doesn't like that. And let's see. It's probably referenced somewhere else. Sorry, we need to narrow that down to search. Okay, there we go. Found it in app.js. Get rid of that. And once again, just little sort of parcel gets a little confused sometimes because it's fast, but it caches too much. Okay, so there we go. We're back, but we're loading all the time. Our home route has a sign out button. We don't want that, so let's just get rid of that. And we have this loading dialog. So under app.js, we'll just set loading to false, and we should be okay. So now we're just on the home route. That was a lot to get there, but now we have a nice boilerplate set up where we have Redux, image components, routes. We have a dialog component that we can make use of. So that's sort of like a starting point for talking to our contract. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to need to basically use Harmony.js core to pull in an instance of Harmony, connect that to our local node, and then we're also going to need to get a instance of our contract that's running. It still is running on this local Harmony node that's on my computer. So I'm going to just do that one more time for you guys to show you that we're going to have a deployment here to the local network that is, whoops, that's not going to work. Okay, it did, but it kind of just failed. It's because we're not in the root directory. So let's go back to the name service root directory. We're going to migrate those contracts, and those are going to use the environment variables defined here, just a recap, and the Truffle config that we borrowed from the node faucet HRC example. But here's our local network config. So we are in fact deploying these contracts live. So, well, live to a node on our computer. So we're going to look at connecting to those contracts through a Harmony instance that's also connected to the same node. So in order to do that in my client application, I'm going to need to start working inside a new Redux file. So I'm going to copy this app.js file, and I'm going to rename that. I'm just going to call this harmony.js. So this is a Redux file that I am going to create a specific store just for Harmony related application state. Okay, so I'm going to use this Redux store as sort of my my application's communication to the Harmony blockchain. So I'm just going to get rid of these functions here. I'll probably have to have some sort of like a init function, and I'll just get rid of that, and we'll dispatch some stuff in a moment so that it's part of the store. Just going to take a look at that, get it wired up through my reducer for my app. This is one kind of little annoying part of Redux is that there seems to be a lot of like repetition of code just to do one thing, but that's why you'll notice my version of Redux is a lot more reduced because I don't want to write all that stuff. So it's just sort of it's a type namespace on a particular store or reducer or whatever you want to call it, and then it just pipes through here and then in my app.js, but probably specifically should be doing it through a specific route. I just hook up the state, so I pull the state in, and I use hooks for everything, so you'll see an example of that coming up. But let's just pull that in, Harmony state and reducer through the Harmony reducer over here, and let's just make sure that we have some initial variable like initialized false, and let's just make sure we can read that, and this should probably set it to be true, but we won't call that just yet. So let's look at Harmony state, and let's look at initialized, and let's make sure that that is in fact saying what we want it to say. And let's go back into the client, and just to refresh everything, I'm just going to restart the app. Okay, that's what I like about Parcel. It's fast. So Harmony state here, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I outputted the whole Harmony state. Let's just look at the initialized variable, Harmony state, false. All right, so that's because initialized is in fact false when we first start up the app, but it hasn't been it hasn't had a init called yet. So let's just do a basic use effect hook here in React, and we're just going to import something else from Redux Harmony. We will import actually we should do this in the home route, so we're just going to rewind. Let's get out of here. The props from app.js just get passed down here to the home route and to the other routes. So let's actually do this properly. Let's put this under the home route. So when the user mounts the app, it's going to mount the home route, and then we'll just use effect here, and we're already calling use dispatch, so we already have dispatch here. So we are going to dispatch, and we just have to grab another piece of the puzzle here. We have to grab the init function from our Redux Harmony file, and we're going to dispatch that, call that init. It's a thunk, so we have to actually call init as if it's like a method inside a method, and that's just so that dispatch and everything works. So if I was going a little fast, don't worry. We're just trying to call this method, but this method returns another method, and that's what dispatch does. So basically, the whole store, dispatch, blah, 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 the latest state of the app gets all hooked up inside here and here, and then we can dispatch to the store name spaced by this sort of name Harmony reducer, and we're going to set initialize to true, which will pass through my magic functions, get reducer, get state. If you guys care, you can go look at my Redux utils in my boilerplate, but don't worry, that's not the point of this tutorial. The point is to talk to the Harmony blockchain, which we're going to get to in just a moment. But let's just make sure that the init is actually getting set. Here we were talking about some Harmony state variable, and we wanted to output that. We'll do the same here. The props are exactly the same. So we can just actually steal it from app.js. Just take that whole thing, just put that there. We're probably not going to use any of this app state loading stuff. And we'll pull that in. So initialized is there, and we should see, oh, it doesn't like something. Oh yeah, the path is a little wrong here. That was hidden. Just need to set the path properly there. So harmony state false, harmony state true. So when home is first mounted, the initialized variable is false, and then this gets called once on mount. So it dispatches a init gets sent to true, and then it comes back and it comes through this function once again, and it sets the initialized to true. So we know that we're actually calling the initialized method here. So now let's get into the good stuff. Let's actually talk to the Harmony blockchain. So for that, I am going to need to initialize a few extra packages here. I'm going to go back to this package.json from the Truffle tests example, and remember I imported this Harmony.js core. And I'll probably need to bring in this tslib. A lot of packages there. Probably need to just do that just for safety's sake. All right, and then we should be able to talk to the Harmony blockchain through the client. Now what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to leverage some of the existing examples. So there's been a lot of work done in these HRC repos. The most recent is the NFT validators example. If I go into the client there and I look through the source and I go to the Redux, I have a lot of contracts that are being pulled in here. And there are some helpers here under the utilities folder. So there's a Harmony utils. So I'm going to pull that in. It's some helpers for getting contract instances. And this is sort of the latest and greatest. A lot of very helpful files here. Now you'll see that these files are relying on a config file. So I'm going to need to set up that config file, and what that config file does is it pulls in the same environment variables. So I'm going to show you how to wire that up as well into the name service example. So I'm going to go into clients, I'm going to go into util, and actually rather than copy paste the whole text, I'm just going to copy paste the file here. So Harmony utils, copy. I'm going to put that in my boilerplate utils here, so that file exists. And I'm also going to grab config.js. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to place it in to, I'm going to place it into client for now. And I'm going to do something a little hacky. I'm going to copy and paste the environment variables down inside here as well. It's not going to kill anything because I'm not going to change this from local. I would have to change it if I was changing to a mainnet deploy, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm basically just gonna continue on with this this example here. So all I've done really is I've pulled in the Harmony utils file into the util folder of my client source here, and then I've added config.js and the .env variables here so that I can pull these into a React application. So nothing, I don't think there's too much to change here, but basically everything kind of gets wired up and hooked up live. I got to close these other folder files here, otherwise I'm going to get really confused. So let's just recap. We've imported some packages into our into our client package.json here. So we've imported Harmony.js core. We probably have to import .env. Make sure I'm in client. That's good. And then we have our Harmony.js Redux store here. We're going to be relying on Harmony utils, so let's keep that open. And Harmony utils relies on config.js, which relies on the environment variables. And I just sort of copied the environment variables down into the client folder just so that everything sort of reconciles. Probably not good to have this living in two places, but just bear with me for the local example. And in another video, I've shown how to deploy to mainnet, so it's just a few changes to the environment variables, so not the end of the world. So we are going to actually try to talk to a contract now, but first we just want to make sure that's the app is still running okay. And first things first, I probably need to just reference an example of this again. Like what would I do without all of these examples? So we're going to look at the auction contract, which I know is working just fine. So what we want to do is we want to, that's another step we're going to have to do is bring down the Truffle build artifacts into our local client directory for our app. So I'm going to copy get util here. Get contract from Harmony utils here. I'm not going to use it yet. I am going to, what else am I going to do? I need to get some information from the NFT validators example from the Harmony portion here, because we need to actually set up Harmony. So let's pull that in. That can just go there as well. So let's just say Harmony imports, just to keep it clean. And we haven't used any yet. And we are going to, we're going to go import some stuff from the config.js. Okay, so just make sure that you have that hooked up and you can actually import from config.js. Mine is right here. And we're going to steal one more little bit of initializing code here. This is under this sign-in, which first we'll just go here and we'll see if we can import Harmony at the specific URL that's specified in config.js and just see if we can output the Harmony instance. So let's add that to our default state, just so that we have a key for it and everybody knows that this is going to be populated at some point. Let's also just console log that out, make sure we can connect through this net variable through the chain type Harmony, and the URL variable here is being used. So let's take a look. That looks okay for now. Not doing too much. We're just getting an instance of Harmony.js core. We haven't done anything yet. Let me close this other one. And I think that's all we need. I'm just going to restart the app one more time. I think it was already working. And let's look in the console here. We see we have an instance of Harmony, so that's all good. Let's just make sure that we get the right chain ID. 2 is for local. And let's take a look at the messenger. I think we should be able to get the URL somewhere. Where is it? URL somewhere in here. Huh. I forget where the actual URL is being stored. But under wallets, we're not going to have any wallets. We have no accounts, so we have to add an account. So what we're going to do is in the environment variables, you'll see that there is a local private key and a local account that's already set up on shard 0. So what we're going to do is, again, I'm just going to steal this from the NFT validators example. So under HRC repo, NFT validators, and under the Redux folder, we have harmony.js, and we're just going to set up one account. So we're going to just do that all in the same init function here. So after we have Harmony set up, well, we can dispatch it, and then we can basically, there's some stuff here to support the extension, but let's not worry about that. Let's just say, we don't even have to worry about that. We just have to set up the minter is sort of like the owner contract, so it's the same private key that is defined in my environment variables for local, so it's that private key right there. So this is basically just going to pull this in. It's going to get an account. We can name it. We can do whatever we want. Let's just call this account, make it null, and then we're going to dispatch, set it to, leave it as the name minter. It's basically the owner of the smart contract. So let's just pull that in and make sure that that's good. We're not even logging it. So let's log that out, make sure we can get that account. So here we have an account. The balances shouldn't be 0. I think we have to go get balances for it. So again, one more time, let's go down here and let's look at what does a get balance 1 look like. So it's a little something like this. We'll just do this here, and just for fun, and then we'll the account.balance1 way to 1. Okay, what does way to 1 do? Do not know. Wondering where that function comes from. Way to 1. Oh, nice little convenience function I put there. So I'm just going to add it to this naming service contract. And let's go ahead and use that as well in here. So this should actually be, we don't know if this is going to be undefined or not. So we'll do something like this. So we'll let result, and then it's kind of weird naming here for this get balance thing, but I don't know what to call it. So we'll just call it balance, I guess, and then we'll just call it balance dot result. And then if it's not defined, we'll have to give it some sort of value. So we'll just give it a 0 value, and then let's just spit out again. Got it. Let's just rename this whole thing. We're going to get rid of the name minter altogether because we're just going to deal with this one account. It's a bit tedious here, I'm not going to lie. And we're going to log out the account, and then if we can, we're going to have a balance of 1 tokens there. We'll see if it works. Okay, there's my balance of 1 there. Okay, and I've rounded it to 4 decimal places. I think that was in the helper function I made a long time ago. All right, so let's not worry about that, but basically we have an account. We know we can go to the chain and check the balance, but what we really came here to see is those contracts. So what we want to do now is we want to connect to the contracts. So we have some helpers here for get contract, and one thing I mentioned is we need to pull in somehow into our source folder. We need to pull in the artifacts of the name service. So the artifact is basically the JSON that gets generated from Truffle. So we need this to be copied into the source folder just so that we can import it into the rest of our source code. So what I usually do is I usually do this in package.json under the scripts. And you'll see an example again. If you go to one of the other HRC examples, NFT-validators is a good one because it's the latest. So you go to package.json and you'll see that my start and my build scripts are importing the environment variables, config.js, and some of the, it should be bringing in the build folder. Oh no, it's not done there. Sorry, I lied. It's done under this deploy script. So when I deploy the contracts, anew, it's basically injecting the new artifacts into the build folder in the client directory. So let's copy this deploy shell script, and let's redeploy the contracts, and then let's also inject the artifacts into our source folder here in the client. So we're going to put that at the top of our name service project here, and we're going to go back out a directory, and we're going to call deploy.sh. Oh, and we need to feed in the network. So it's going to complain there because the network is a variable there. Just before I get too confused, I'm going to close all of these tabs, close all this stuff so that we don't get confused with our package.json scripts. And we're going to leave it all open to the Redux file, which we want to work in. So we're going to deploy the contracts one more time to local, and at the same time, we are going to copy the build artifact here for contracts into our source directory, so you can see it's already been copied in. The contracts are deploying to the blockchain now, so now we can actually import the contract artifact into this Redux file. So we can import contract. It's basically the Abby. It's some other info too, but don't worry about it. So let's import capitals, name service from, and we want to just walk out of our Redux folder and walk into our build folder, contracts / name service. So we're going to import name service from this JSON here, and then once we have a Harmony instance, once we have our account set up, we're going to actually get contract instance. So we will have to, I forget the exact syntax of this, but we're going to use this get contract method here. So it assumes that we are passing in some state, Harmony extension, and some active account that we want. This doesn't really matter. This is the only one that really matters. These can be null. So what we can do is we can just ask for Harmony back, so it'll just give us the Harmony instance. We don't really need to. I think we get the contract instance back too. Yeah, contract. So we actually just really need the contract instance because we're just going to use the same Harmony. Let's look at the state variable that it expects. It expects a Harmony instance defined in the state variable. So let's just call get contract. Let's make our own state object here that we're going to pass in. We're going to pass it the Harmony blockchain instance that it needs to talk to the contract. We're going to pass in the other parameter, which is the artifact, so the other argument, and that would be name service, all caps. And here we're going to get out a contract. So let's just see if that worked. And if it doesn't, we have to debug that. I'm not going to log out the account anymore. So it says, cannot read Abby of undefined. So that's probably a problem with this name service JSON here. So let's take a look at that. And sure enough, it's undefined. So name service, I'm not sure why, but I don't know why that's not working. So I'm going to just quickly reference another another example. NFT validators here. Go into the Redux. Go look at the auction. It looks like it's the same from build contracts. Yeah, it's doing it in the exact same way. Oh, I know why. So we have to restart Parcel after we redeploy the contracts. So back into the client directory first, then restart Parcel, which should bring in the new files. We should be able to reference them now. Oh boy, it really doesn't like that. So let's take a look here. Name service is still undefined. Probably I'm destructuring it, which I probably shouldn't be doing. There we go. So now we have the JSON is being pulled in, and then the actual contract instance is here. So we are so close to being able to talk to our actual contract. You can see we've got methods, we've got get name, set name, all sorts of really fun, good stuff. Just a quick note, because I'm adding the wallet by private key, when I call set name, it's actually not going to, it's not going to ask for any permissions. Like, you won't see an extension fly up or anything. But I should probably do that in a completely separate method, right? Because we've already set up Harmony in this init method, and now we're going to need to do all this in another method so that we can trigger it based on some user interaction. So let's get rid of that. Let's get the contract instance. We will need to get the Harmony variable though. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that from the store by calling get state, and then this is in the Harmony reducer. So Harmony name services imported into this file already, and then we're going to do the tx. Okay, and let's call this set name. So let's go to home. In our home route, we have some sample text, which we don't need anymore. We're going to make a input variable. We're going to call it name. On change is going to be set name e.target.value, and then we're going to have a button. On click equals, I'm making up what I want to do, which is basically I want to dispatch I want to dispatch now I'm going to have a naming conflict. Thinking set address name. I'll make that one a little bit more verbose. I'll pass in the name variable, which will be the value set here because of our fancy hooks and all that good stuff. Set name. Set address name will be the function that I'm going to pull in from the Harmony thing here. Change that to set address name. That's the part that I like about hooks and stuff. We just need to use state here. So how are we going to use state? We're going to just say const name, set name. I don't like that syntax, but whatever. And then placeholder equals choose name. Okay, and then we're going to look at that. It's going to say choose name. We're going to edit some stuff. We see that thing going bananas because we're still console logging there. We can click set name. Dispatch is not defined. That's because it's spelt wrong. So we're going to dispatch like that, and we're going to just do it anyways. And it's not going to do anything because it's just coming down here, but it should spit out a contract instance. So let's just test that works. All right, okay. So now we actually want to do the contract transaction. So again, helpers, use your helpers. Where's toggling the auction on and open from NFT validators example. I've gone into the Redux, gone into the auction.js, and I am just going to steal this transaction because it's nice. It's already done for me. So I am going to paste this in here. From who? From account. From what address? Account.address. Toggle is open. That's not the contract method we're looking for. We are looking for set name. And now we're going to run into a really interesting one. How to set the Ascii. Forget about this stuff. Those are just the args. We're going to run into how to set the Ascii value of the name variable that we're going to pass in. So remember, name is a string, but we need it converted to hex. So name must be hex and padded, maybe. So name equals, and then we're going to find some function to do that. But first, I'm just going to set up my confirmation here. I'm just going to confirm. I'm not going to do anything else with the name. And I need to figure out a way to get the equivalent of a Web3. Remember my test here in part 1, I had trouble converting the string to Ascii. Where's my test folder? There it is. So again, going back to our test, we needed to make sure that Alice name was converted to Ascii to hex. So we have similar things like that in the Harmony.js SDK, like this, new Harmony utils unit. So before I do anything, I'm going to comment out all of this, and I'm just going to console log out new Harmony is there, and I'm just going to console out the utils, and I'm going to browse around. Yes, this is true. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to browse around the utils. Oh boy. And that's not a constructor, so what is? Then I'll just say HMY, and I'm going to browse around and make sure that I can actually convert something to hex. It's got to be here somewhere. You've probably found it before me. It's going to be something like, I'm not finding it. Nope. Units. Add 0x to string. I don't think so. I want to find a string to hex converter here. Number to string, that doesn't really help much. Two-way, unit map, nope. Okay, so I might have to do this the old-fashioned way. So I might have to how would I do this? Convert the string to hex. Oof. I'm just going to go ahead and do it here. Oh, I don't like the Web3 guys. Okay, this looks relatively trustworthy. Hex encode, hex decode. Let's do it. let's just add this to, I guess, our Harmony utils that's going to get run anyways. All right, and let's add it here as well. This is just extending the string prototype. So let's go back to here, and we should be able to call name.hex encode on the prototype of the string. So let's take a look. It should work. And we'll go back. Looks like it's encoding into some hex there. I think it's going to be padded a little too much for the blockchain, but we'll see. I can't remember what the Alice example was doing. We could also go check out Web3 utils, Ascii. Don't edit the docs on GitHub. No, I want to actually look at the docs. I want to actually look at the source code. Oh boy, this is going to be old. I'll just go through here. Come on. Okay. This is going to be nasty. All right. I think the best thing to do then would just be easiest, lowest hanging fruit would be to just import Web3. Oh boy, didn't want to do it, but here we go. And then we should be able to import it here and just use this. So I should have just done that in the beginning, but import. I'm not sure how to import Web3, but let's see if this works. And let's go down here. Sorry I didn't stop the video. If you get to this point, this is embarrassingly me struggling with converting a string to hex. But you know, we'll get there. Let's just see if this even works. Some remote degree. I think we've lost our client here. Just waiting, come on, start. There we go. So we're probably utils of undefined, yeah, probably. All right, we've got Web3 there, and we've got some sort of something being exported here. Okay, so let's take a look at name. It's probably converted. All right, that looks good. I guess the other one was gonna work, but it was just padded a little too much. This looks like it should be okay. So now that our name is fine, let's make sure we can set the user's name. So let's set the name here, account.address. That's the Alice account, and we're just gonna check for a confirmation. So this will actually, in fact, start the whole transaction. We're only gonna see it in the console though. Let's just refresh the client one last time, and we'll say Alice should be Alice. There's the hash, and it should be, that's that. It should be transferring to the blockchain. Okay, we got a receipt and it's confirmed. Okay, so now what we can do is we can put in Alice's address and we can get the name out. So we can get name by address, and we're going to do that here in a contract call, so we'll just leave everything the same. The address is just going to be the address, so we don't need to do anything fancy with that. Get name, address, call. This doesn't really matter who we call it from. Address is the same. And we should get back the value. I think the value should just come back immediately, so we don't need to wait for anything. And let's console log out the name. And just make sure we can get name by address. We're going to add another button here. And we're going to say get name. Which name? Let's say get name by address. And the name is going, or the address is going to be address. We're just going to cheat a little bit here. We're going to get the address out of Harmony state. We're going to say account. And then we're going to destructure that into address. So get name is going to just call that. It's going to pull the name out of the contract. Get name by address. Make sure it's imported. It got imported automatically. All right, so let's go ahead and call that now. Some complaining here. Can't get address of null. Yeah. Okay. Let's just do this here. Account, and then we'll just do account dot address. Just didn't like it because account was not initialized earlier. So let's get name. That's a promise pending. Oh, it got resolved, and that's the value. So now we want to use a Web3 util hex to Ascii. So let's convert back. I really hate this whole conversion thing. There we go. Let's just grab that and let's go back to here and let's do that and let's put name in there, and we're gonna await this so that we don't just get the value and not the promise like we saw last time. We're gonna go back to the naming service. We're gonna call get name. And we see Alice and a bunch of gobbledygook. Those are padding zeros. So what are we going to do about that? Well, maybe we can just call name. It's not going to be very safe to do this, but we could restrict names that don't involve zero, and we'd just do the letter zero or the number zero, and then replace that with an empty string. This is really nasty. Oh, must be a valid hex string, huh? Wow, you don't like that. Okay. I don't even know what those extra characters are that are being spat out. Just some kind of BS on the end of the hex there. Really don't know. Oh, it's a dot. Isn't that nice? So I bet if it's someone else's, there's going to be a bunch of weird strings here. Okay. How do we get rid of those? Let's try to get rid of those, I guess. Can't even paste that in there. So we're going to do a dot replace on \u0. Okay, so let's try to write a regular expression for this. First, we want to escape a backslash, and then it's a u, and then it's a 0, and then nope, that's not going to work. That's going to be, it's like that. There we go. I think. Okay, and this is really me struggling to sort of get something sensical out of this. Nope, didn't work. All right. So I do not know how to truncate out those extra characters, but we will probably just have to live with it. I really want to get rid of them though. Maybe you don't need the escape. That's what it is. No, I didn't like that. Why would you not let me get rid of you? Okay. Oh, there we go. Oops. Okay, almost had it. You think? Maybe? Probably not. No. Doesn't like it, doesn't match anything. Maybe just do a simple place. No. Just doesn't like that. I really don't like this. Okay. Don't know why. That's not me. Oh, I know why. Maybe when we did the replace, we probably need the zeros from name to actually make an official hex character. So it's probably likes the 5-0, but it doesn't like we don't want the rest of it. So we'd have to replace all zeros, and then I'm assuming if it was an odd number, we would add a 0 back in. I don't know anybody. Let's just assume we're gonna get Alice and some junk. So anyway, hooking that up on the front end, we would say that the name is blank. The name coming from the state here, we're probably going to want to set that to name from chain. And we're going to go to the home here. We're going to import name from chain here. And we're going to dispatch it at the end of this this function here that reads it out. So we're going to go type, and name from chain is going to equal this. So we'll spit that out down at the bottom here. Name from chain, and we'll just put a little warrant thing there so we can tell. Name from chain not defined. All right, hold on. And that's because we didn't declare it here. Oh, all that effort for trying to get rid of that, and it doesn't even show up anyways. Forget about that. So there's Alice's name, and then if we change our name to like Alice2, and we set name, the transaction hasn't gone through, and it did go through. So now it's name. The name is Alice2. It's on the next line because there's a bunch of those empty characters there. But if I just change the style here for just a moment, it's some sort of global style. Some min max width or something. Yeah, here. Just get rid of that for now. And then we get the name. It's still not doing it, but it's because the paragraph is sort of limited there by the max width. Not sure why. There we go. It's on the body. Okay, cool. So that's a big long string with a bunch of extra zeros in it, but still we got the name. So Let's quickly recap everything. Apologies for the little delays there, but let's go back to contracts. And I just had no idea how to work with that bytes 32 and the hacks and stuff. Haven't done that for a long time, probably since when I started messing around with contracts in like 2017. So let's recap here. Under the name service example, we have a contracts folder where we added a name service contract. It allows anyone to set a name and get the names. There's some public getters here, but it only allows the owner of the address, obviously the sender of the message, the payload to the contract, to set their name. We ran through some tests in part 1 about how to sort of make sure that that Alice could set her name. We could actually have run a test to make sure that, actually, we can't run a test to make sure that somebody can't set a name for another person's name, because it's impossible. It's not possible in the contract. So it looks like it's okay, and we can get the name out. So those were our tests, very sort of naive test coverage here. But then we wanted to add to a simple front-end application here where people can administer their name. Like Alice could, she could say, Alice, hi, Bob. That would be her name. That would be kind of silly. But then once that transaction is confirmed, we can read that back out from the blockchain, and there's her name. So this get name function is always using, remember, it's always using the account address that we're logging in as. So we could, for every different account, it's going to use a different address, and we could specify the address that the person wants to check the name for. So we could actually check on other people's names, not just our own, and that's because the get name takes in an address as an argument. And we can also get the owner by feeding in the name. Again, it has to be the correct hex converted name, so from Ascii to hex, and then it has to match, but we can get the address back given a name as an input. So we could have added that as an extra an extra piece of our front end of our Dapp here. Just a quick recap of Harmony JS. There is a lot of extra magic happening behind the scenes. So double check that you have the Harmony utils JavaScript file in your util folder from various other examples in the HRC repo. I recommend the NFT validators example as one of the latest ones. And also make sure you're importing Harmony JS core. You'll see we're not using some stuff here, but don't worry about it. Also make sure that you have a deploy.sh script that is going to migrate your contracts for you and copy the artifact builds from Truffle into your client source code. Otherwise, you won't be able to import your contract artifact here. It's basically just the Abby. It's where we get the Abby from, which is the application blockchain interface. So the last piece is make sure you can import config.js. It sets up a lot of useful variables for you, like which network you're on and the URL. You can kind of kill the other ones you don't use here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take this example and put it up onto the HRC repo so that you can start from this code base. So that's it. Thanks everyone for checking this out. I realized it was a little long, and again, don't judge me on my Ascii to hex conversion. Those were not my tools, and it's not my intention to use bytes 32 for any sort of pain-inducing reasons. It's just because it's a nice variable type that allows us to sort of check equality and things like that. I'm not even sure if by now in more recent versions of Solidity, if you can actually make a mapping from a string to an address. That was another one of my concerns, is that we wanted like a nice tight data type that fit under 256 bits because that's how everything in Solidity runs. We just ran into some conversion trouble from hex to ASCII. But you know what? It all turned out okay. We have a cool little Dapp here. We can reset our name to Alice. We can wait for the transaction to confirm. And once it's confirmed, we can call getName, which will read the state out of the blockchain and get the name for our address, which is awesome. So thanks again for checking out the example, and look for this in the, I'll go to it right now. Look for this in the github.com harmony-1 HRC repo under the master examples folder. All right, thanks everyone for checking it out.